Hello and welcome to Running on Carbs podcast. I am your host, Coach Val, and I would like to welcome you to episode number 43 of the podcast. So, welcome today. I hope you get a lot out of today's episode. We're going to talk about something fun. I want to know if you are a lazy runner. And so, are you a lazy runner? Raise your hand if you are. Or if you hear me say, are you a lazy runner and you take offense? Let's talk about that too. So, let us jump right into it and talk about what is a lazy runner. So, I looked it up on Google because I was curious, what does Google say a lazy runner is? So if you look it up on Google, you're going to find that lazy runner says that actually going to find several definitions on Google about lazy runner. But what I did was I also looked it up on Chat GPT and said, okay, Chat GPT, here's my prompt. I asked it, what is the definition of a lazy runner? And Chat GPT came back, and I'm going to read a little bit for you for what Chat GPT said. So Chat GPT says, a lazy runner is typically a playful or tongue-in-cheek term used to describe someone who enjoys running, but prefers a more relaxed, low-effort approach. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. The definition can vary, but it often includes characteristics like running for pleasure rather than chasing specific goals. All right, that sounds good, such as like speed or distance. Also said that sticking to shorter or slower runs, avoiding high intensity training. Okay. Prioritizing comfort over performance, such as taking walk breaks or stopping to enjoy the scenery. Following a laid back training plan or a non existent no training plan. And loving the social or meditative aspects of running more than the competitive side. And, I don't think lazy running should be taken as an insult. I mean, none of that sounded bad to me. It sounded very enjoyable, as a matter of fact. And so much of what we do when we run doesn't have to be so highly competitive, especially if you are a master's runner, running in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. A lot of our mentality around running really shifts as we age because maybe you've been running all of your life or for a very long period of time. And maybe you used to go out and be very competitive and want to hit those times, those numbers. But as with so many things in life, as we age and get older, we start to look at things in a different perspective. I'm not saying that just because you're over 40, all of a sudden you're not competitive and you don't want to hit good times that are good for you. You don't want to be competitive. Not saying that at all, because I think that there's a lot of positive that comes out of that competitive spirit, even if that competition is only with yourself. There's a lot of positive things that come from being having a competitive spirit. But there's also a lot of positive things to not having that competition always front and center in something that should be enjoyable and positive and encouraging and motivating, stress relieving. So I think being a lazy runner has some positives to it in a lot of ways. And so saying that you're a lazy runner, I think it should be something to embrace, not to be bristled by. It's really like more of a self-awareness, and a celebration of running, but without all that unnecessary pressure to hit time goals and distance goals and things like that. Um, so anyway, that's what ChatGPT had to say about it. And Google's response, though, so going back to Google, and this is where I'm going to talk quite a bit because I want to analyze some of these things that Google had in their response. So I liked ChatGPT as far as that response. I think that was very encouraging in a lot of ways. I mean, who wants to? If you're not training for something really specific and you're just simply running for the fitness and joy of it, taking walk breaks and enjoying the scenery around you, I think is a very enjoyable way to experience the experience of running. I know that when I did my second half marathon, I ran a trail race, and it was in the Marin Headlands, which is in Northern California, outside of the city of San Francisco. So if you're familiar with the area, you know how beautiful this area is. And I didn't push myself on that race because I knew that there were hills and it was different terrain than my first half marathon, which is a road half marathon. And so it was a totally different experience. And so when I reached these massive hills, I would walk. Mm. I also stopped and took video of the beautiful scenery. I took pictures, I took selfies. I just enjoyed the entire experience of just being in that environment and the beauty of the surroundings that were all around me. So there's a lot to be said about taking in where you are and enjoying that when you are in a beautiful place like that and you're running. So I think running can really take us to a lot of different places that we wouldn't otherwise go. And so one of those could be a lot of beautiful trails, and to simply run fast down trails is, it seems like such a waste of beauty. It's not like you're running in your neighborhood that you run in every single day. So you just sort of tune out because you see those same houses day in, day out. When you go someplace like a trail race, even if it's a trail in your neighborhood or a trail nearby your house, um, it's still, you're out in nature. So to take in the beauty of the nature around you, I think it just adds that extra, I don't know, that extra layer of um, depth. There we go, depth to your running. So let's talk about Google. What does Google say? So Google's AI overview gave me this definition. Okay, I'm going to read their definition and then we'll talk about their key points. And there's 4 of them. Okay, so Google says a lazy runner refers to someone who runs with minimal effort, often characterized by poor form, infrequent training, and a tendency to prioritize comfort over pushing themselves to improve their running ability, essentially taking the easiest route possible while still considering themselves a runner. They might skip workouts, not focus on technique, and only run when absolutely necessary. That didn't quite sound as positive and motivational and enjoyable as ChatGPT's response. But there were some good, interesting points in here that I wanted to break down and kind of analyze a little. And the first one was that lazy runners run with minimal effort and poor running form. So in Google, they say that they might not focus on proper posture or stride mechanics, which would lead to inefficiencies and potential injuries. It's hard to argue with that. I have to say that if you are using poor form, then you do increase your injury risk. So, although a lazy runner might want to take in the scenery, they might want to run more easy efforts and not put in a lot of effort as far as like speed training and things. All of that should be fine. Those are personal choices, right? And it all depends on where you are in your training and your running journey. But focusing on proper running mechanics can keep you running. So if you aren't focused on good posture, then you might end up with neck aches or back aches or all sorts of aches. And that could stop you from running. And also it reduces your quality of life. So there is something to be said about, if you're going to be a lazy runner, to still have some focus on good posture and good form for overall health, not just for running performance. Um, I also think that there's different degrees of this posture analysis and stride mechanics, because you can go a lot of different ways with that. So you can do the DIY, which is like the do it yourself, listen to these podcasts, watch videos, read running books, and understand the basics of proper mechanics, how to hold your arms, for example, at a 90-degree angle, not to clench your fists, to keep your fists loose and your hands loose, to keep your shoulders back, to focus on proper arm positioning, like a nice arm swing. You don't want to over swing. You don't want to have your arms just kind of flailing around either. So those all count as proper running mechanics, but those are quote unquote simple, right? They're things that you can do without a lot of extra assistance. You can learn those things and then you just immediately put them into practice. Whereas you can go the other spectrum or to the other side of the spectrum of analysis, and you can go to a lab and have your running gait analyzed on a treadmill with little glowing dots and AI and video, and so you can go the total extreme the other direction. And not everybody's going to want to go that route or even need to go that route. It all depends on what your goals are for your running. And, okay, so a lazy runner in this definition probably doesn't need to go to a lab and have a gait analysis, but they could maybe benefit from some good tips on how to hold their body for proper running mechanics so that they can avoid injury and pain. So you see the difference there? So I think that there's something to be said for making sure we still focus on running form, even if we're going to be a lazy runner. All right. So the next one, number 2, like I said, there's 4 of these. The second one is inconsistent training. Google says they might frequently miss runs, not follow a structured training plan, and only run when motivated. Okay, so let's break this down. Why are you running? I think that's the first thing you have to ask yourself when it comes to your inconsistent training. Why do you run? Is it for fitness, right? Are you just in an off season, so you're not really taking on a structured plan at the moment? Does it just feel good? Like you like that endorphin high? Do you do it for stress relief? Do you have a stressful job or just stressful life? And it's your way of just getting out of the house and running off all that energy so that you can come back and give more of yourself to those you love or your work or your just life in general? Or do you want to run your fastest half marathon? Do you want to PR your next 5K? Um, do you want to run your first marathon versus maybe running your 15th marathon? All of these different running goals have a different attack. Like we have to attack them differently. And they all require different training. So if you are running for stress relief, then not having a structured plan that tells you you have to run 15 miles today when you didn't get any sleep last night because you're up with a sick dog or spouse or stressed out from a work project. You know, maybe you don't have the physical energy to run that 15 miles. Well, if you don't have a race that you are training for that's very important to you, then maybe you don't need to run that 15 miles. Or maybe you can walk some of it. You have alternatives and you have options if you are taking the lazy runner route. But if you are training for that fastest 5K, so if you want to PR your 5K, taking an infrequent training route is not going to get you there. I can pretty much guarantee that. Unless you're doing a whole heck of a lot of cross training in high endurance, and even then, I think that would be a pretty big challenge to PR your 5K without any training, especially if you're on this more speedy side. So, what are your goals? You have to think about that. Why do you want to? Why are you running? Why do you get up and run whenever it is that you do? um, but there's something to be said about consistent training, though, because consistency leads to lower injury risk as long as you're not like overdoing it. But it absolutely does lead to less injury and less pain because, for example, when you are a newer runner, it's very common to get a lot of lower leg aches and pains, maybe even to the degree of like shin splints. So you can even go that far if you overdo it. But to have like some minor ankle soreness or shin soreness or calf tightness, these things are fairly normal when it comes to a new runner. Well, if you are inconsistent with your training, you are constantly backsliding to like new runner mode, depending on where you started in your journey. But if you're that inconsistent, then you're constantly like starting over and your body just has to rebuild every time you start to add some mileage. And it can get into a vicious cycle too, because if you are running and training and you get these, sore calves, sore shins or something, and so you back off your training and you stop and you don't do anything to fix the problem, you just simply rest only, then you get into this vicious like rest injury cycle. And it can happen with a lot of things. And unfortunately, in the medical profession, a lot of times that's the advice for us runners is, oh, just take a break, stop running, without adding some sort of way to strengthen the body so that when you start running again, you are strong enough to sustain that activity. So I feel like that's kind of a divergent from my topic here, but it's a frustration of mine that I have. I hate that because you can't just stop the activity, expect to come back to it, and not be re-injured. So we have to get that strength in there so that you can prepare the body to continue on with what you want to do, whether that's going to be increasing mileage over time or whether it's just simply sustaining what you're doing right now. Okay, number three, they prioritize comfort over performance. They might choose slower paces, shorter distances, or flat routes to avoid exertion. I don't know, this one doesn't sound too bad to me. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but I really enjoy my long, slow distance running. Um, Shorter distances, there's days for me. I prefer the longer distances, but that takes training. So you can't do what is it, two here, inconsistent training, and expect to do longer distances. Um, so you have to train up to those distances. Flat routes, I don't know. I like a nice flat route personally. So again, it goes back to your why. So why are you running? Um, if you're not running to train for a hilly race and you enjoy those nice, easy distances, then I don't see anything wrong with having a nice slow pace on a flat route. It's enjoyable. It's pleasant. Um, if that is your form of exercise and that is your form of enjoyment and meditation, then be a lazy runner and embrace it and love it because that is the joy of running right there. It's what you love to do. Then I know there's some of you out there who just love the challenge of a big hill. I don't know if you fall into the lazy category, if you're a hill lover like that, but there's a time and a place for everything. Um, there's nothing wrong with a little variety either. But to prioritize the comfort, I gotta admit, lately I've been prioritizing my comfort over like heavy training. I came off of a half marathon training and I ran my race. I felt really good about it. I'm very proud of the performance that I had. And since then, I've been a lazy runner and I've been really enjoying it. There will be a time that I kick back into gear and start training again with focus and determination and scheduling. I keep a schedule, but it's pretty loose right now. And you know what? Most of my runs are nice and flat. And the majority of my runs these days has been on that treadmill there behind me because it's cold in the morning and I kind of feel like a fair weather runner right now. I've done my fair share of running in the rain, cold, wind, etc. But right now, I'm really embracing this whole lazy runner thing because I really enjoy getting on that treadmill in the morning, turning on Netflix or a podcast or a YouTube video, and just running easy and watching shows. I just, I love it. I'm having a good old time right now. And you know what? That's the season I'm in. So, prioritizing comfort over performance, there's absolutely a time and a place for that. All right. So, last one, number 4, lack of focus on improvement. They might not actively work on increasing speed, endurance, or technical skills. Okay, so let's analyze this, break it down. Do you want to get faster? I think that's probably the first question to ask yourself. Do you want to run a faster race? Or just in general, do you want to increase your speed and your pace? Mhm. That's up to you. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you're comfortable where you are. Or maybe you do want to increase your pace, but you're not looking to be a speed demon either. Um, do you prefer to run for the challenge? Like we were talking about that hill runner? Or do you prefer just the joy of running and just being out there, having it be more social? Maybe you like to run in groups or with friends, or maybe it's more of meditative. And so you like to just run on your own and just be nice and easy and listen to your podcast or have a few moments alone without, I don't know, children hanging on you or something. Um, whatever your reason, it's okay to have seasons of both. And that's really, I think, what it comes down to, right? There is a season for everything in our life. And if you are listening to this podcast and you fall into one of the primary categories of listeners, I think that listen to my show, and you might be in your season of life where you're over 40, maybe you're over 50, and you are in a different season than you were in your 20s and 30s. And I think running has similar seasons. Maybe they don't follow the same trajectory, but we have different desires at this time of our life as before. So, although maybe we want to get faster, we're not really focused on being the 20-minute or 15-minute, God forbid, 5K runner. I love to watch the pros at the races. So when I go to like the Carlsbad 5000 every year, I love watching the pros race and I am always absolutely amazed at their pacing and to watch them come across that finish line because I've run my race before they do because they always run last. And I know how freaking hard I run the race usually and how exhausting it is. And like by the end of that 5K, I think I'm ready to throw up. If I did it right, I'm ready to throw up at the finish line. I've never thrown up, but I feel like it. So I know I push myself really hard. And I am like nowhere near, nowhere near where those ladies are running. I mean, I can't even make a comparison of time. I think that they could probably run it twice before I even finish the first time. So they, but I embrace that because that's where I am right now in my life, and they are somewhere else. Not that I keep saying that I've ever been able to run like that, but I certainly appreciate watching them because it is beautiful to see. Um, by the way, speed demons. Okay, sidebar real quick. If you like if you like this episode and you like running in general and you like to listen to stories or watch shows about running, currently on Netflix, there's 2 seasons of a show called Sprint. And now I don't do track and field. I don't know anything about like 100 meters and 200 meters and all that. However, that show is all about these athletes who are at the competitive level and they're going for the most recent season number 2. They're training and going to the Olympics that just occurred in 2024. And it's really fun to see their background and stuff and to watch these races. And what's funny is that I was watching the show on my treadmill the other morning, and it always feels good to watch other people running really fast when I'm on my treadmill running really slow. But they were running their races and stuff, and I was thinking, "Oh, I like this show. It's such a, it's so inspiring, and I like this documentary style. They should make one for marathon runners. I would love to see, marathon for a season." And then realized what I was doing. And I was running like 5 miles on the treadmill at a very slow, easy pace because it was an easy run. And I went, this would make a very boring documentary. Maybe that's why they didn't make a marathon documentary. So this would not be a fun documentary to watch, because that's what we do as long distance runners, is a lot of long, slow distances. And it's not real exciting to watch, but it's very enjoyable to do. So embrace that. I think that counts as like our lazy running category. Our lazy runner category is that nice, long, slow, easy distance. I personally love it. All right. So what else have I got here? So with all that said, I am really happy being a lazy runner. Like, I think I've expressed that. And personally, I think a lazy runner is a compliment. Means that you are enjoying your running. You're doing it for the joy and love of running purely, and that can't be a negative in my book. It also means that you're taking care of yourself. You have other life priorities, either right now or just always. You have other life priorities, and running is not the one that you're competitive for. Running is your enjoyment. And just because you are a lazy runner does not mean that you are not a runner. You are a runner. It doesn't matter what your pace is. You're a runner. If you are running, you're a runner. So don't let anybody say that just because your pace is slower than someone else's, or if it's not. I used to see on, like, if you looked up on the internet, it used to say, what's the difference between jogging and running? And they would say, oh, it's a 10-minute mile. That's the threshold. That's wrong. There's no threshold. If you are running and one foot is off the ground and so is the other foot, you're running. So I think that's an easier definition. They need to update the internet. All right. So when the time is right and you want to be more focused, though, and be a structured runner, if you have if you have a goal in mind, a race in mind, that's when you kick it into gear and you get your training plan. So you could get a training plan that's already written and structured. You can hire a coach. You can, follow a plan that you've followed before. But if you're training for something, that is the time to be focused. So you can't be a lazy runner and do a training plan and expect to have positive results. As a matter of fact, I would strongly discourage against that plan, because I don't want to see you get hurt. And that happens a lot when people don't follow any type of plan. They are disappointed oftentimes because they didn't follow any structure. They want to get this big goal out here, but they don't follow any structure. They don't have any help or assistance. They maybe don't have an idea of like how to get from A to B. And then they do the race and they're very disappointed with the outcome. Either they got hurt, they had a poor pace, they had to walk far more than they had anticipated or planned on. And that just is poor planning and a poor execution of a plan. And all those things are fixable. So if you had that happen, don't beat yourself up. Those are all fixable things. Just, get a coach, get a good training plan, and then follow that plan. If you need accountability, it's like the number one reason people hire coaches is for that accountability factor. So if you need that accountability, reach out to me. Personally, I like plans even when I'm not training. just because I like to have an idea of like, okay, what am I going to do? And then I'm not like doubling up on things. I'm not overdoing it. That's the other thing. And I'm also not underdoing, my training as far as like fitness training. So I pretty much always have at least a plan in place. And I may or may not follow it to a T when I'm in an off season like I am now. And I'm simply running for enjoyment at the moment. So, like this morning was supposed to be a plyometric workout. I don't know. Spoiler alert, I didn't do it. So, I have a lot of reasons for it. But no, I did get my plyometrics done today. But I'll do something tomorrow. So tomorrow on my plan, I don't know what's on my plan. I've got a run on my plan. I believe it's a tempo run because I have been incorporating more speed work into my runs lately, um, but just a little. So I'll do a tempo run once a week these days. So I do have a tempo run on my training schedule tomorrow, and then I'll take another rest day. Um, so I've got it kind of loosely structured, but you know what? If I had a really late night like I did last night and I woke up late, I needed to prioritize sleep in this case, and I knew I had a very, very busy day today. It has been jam packed from morning till now night. Um, and I've got this podcast I need to record and get out. So I had commitments. And so there wasn't really room for plyometrics on the minimal energy that I had to save and preserve for work efforts. So sometimes that happens, but that's a nice thing about an off season too. You can prioritize those other parts of your life that have to take a back seat when you are in full training mode. Um, but if you are in that mode, I have a note here. Don't sign up for a race if you are not in serious training mode. so so that is a key thing. Don't sign up for something if you're not prepared to commit to it. Again, that's where injuries happen and disappointment. So wait till you're ready for that commitment. Now, life doesn't have to be perfect when you do that. That's not what I'm saying. But you do have to be prepared to commit. That much is true. And again, accountability helps with that as well, as long as you can structure the rest of it and make that make running and training a priority at that season. So when it's over, move to your next season. Season comes, season goes, move to the next. All right. So embrace and enjoy the season that you are in right now, whatever that might be. I hope this was fun and enjoyable for you. Now you know, and you can take the test and see whether or not you are a lazy runner or if you are not a lazy runner right now. But I do want to put a quick plug in for next week's episode because all of my episodes up until now, episode number 43, have been solo episodes. And next week, I am excited to be bringing on my very first guest. So I'm going to be joined by a friend of mine who is also my acupuncturist. And she is going to come on and talk about running and acupuncture. And I am super excited to share that interview with you. So please make sure if you have not subscribed to the podcast and you want to hear all about acupuncture for runners, please subscribe to the podcast and don't miss that episode. I think it's going to be fantastic and you will get a lot out of it. So, okay, so until then, I hope to see you next week. And until next week, don't forget, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic week. Bye bye.